Good evening, Grinders. Welcome to Monday Showdown Live. I'm Jordan Cooper, aka Blenderhead, joined with me by Justin Van Zuden, STL Cards. We're coming a little earlier today, a little bit more time to make your lineups for the big Showdown slate tonight on both sites. Chiefs Ravens, big matchup, big contest. It's a million to first for both sites. Let's see if there's a solo Millie winner, but still, if you could get a lineup that duplicated less than 10 times, that's still a six-figure payday.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun matchup tonight. I mean, I think everyone's pretty excited. One of the more hyped up Monday Night Football games we've had in quite some time. So, really nice to see those big tournaments out there to get some money. And I'm a Baltimore supporter, so got the personal rooting interest at hand tonight as well. So it should be a fantastic game between two really good football teams.
Yeah, and we have the inactives are in. Sammy Watkins will be active. Does that mean he plays a million snaps? We don't know, but he's active. I'm assuming Cards that he's getting out of the concussion protocol. He practiced in full over the weekend. Like this isn't like a contact injury. So if I had to guess probability wise, like he's going to be in full participation. It's not like a hamstring injury. It's kind of concussion protocol, and then he's fine, right?
Yeah, you're cleared. So I would imagine he'll be in line for his normal complement of snaps. It's not like he hadn't been playing the first 2 weeks. Seems like he's good to go, and sometimes he has those big performances on these either week one usually or sometimes on these single game slates. So will be interesting to see how the Chiefs utilize him tonight.
And there's nothing else unexpected in the inactives. So like Chris Moore is inactive, Justice Hill. I mean, the people that were inactive for other games are with no Ricky Seals-Jones. So you're, the fourth tight end or whatever, third tight end. But everyone else should be fine. And if you're in the YouTube chat, feel free to, you could always ask your questions. We'll always chat with you in the YouTube chat. Hit that thumbs up button, right? If you want to win tonight, you got to hit the thumbs up button. If you want your opponents to lose, you hit the thumbs down button, because the YouTube algorithm, I don't think, doesn't care if it's up or down. As long as you just click your mouse around. It'll be fine. So from a lineup construction perspective on DraftKings, we'll primarily talk about DraftKings. FanDuel is kind of, there's no captain, there's done 1.5 multiplier. There's a lot of duplicates. It's pretty clear that the optimal, from a median perspective, captains are the quarterbacks. Like Lamar's rushing upside from a raw points perspective leads him to be the captain. And if he's not in the captain spot, he's in a flex spot. So, I'm assuming you agree with that. How do you build lineups? First off, like, obviously you could build lineups that look nice with either of them in the captain, but is there a way in a contest that's 260,000 entries that you could do that and not be duplicated a million times?
It's a tough question. I think if you leave salary on the table, I think you give yourself a chance to at least be minimally duplicated. By that, I mean, I think, if you got Jackson or Mahomes in the captain spot, that lineup is going to most likely be duplicated just because they're going to be so popular. So, if you leave some salary on the table, leave $600, $700, $800 on the table, people are inherently nervous about doing that. So maybe if that's the optimal lineup, it goes from being a 300-way tie to, an 8 or 10-way tie, which is not insignificant in a tournament with $1 million up top. So I wouldn't get as caught up on trying to build a unique lineup, but one that's, you don't want to be the person building the lineup that, is duplicated 600 times, because the likelihood of that being optimal, and then the first place payout that you get, if that hits, you're going to be taking home much less than what you would expect to for chopping a first place prize. So it's a tough balance, and for those that don't play Showdown contests that often, it's tough to get off of the what feels like the build that you have to make. So it becomes tricky, and particularly when those quarterbacks are Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes, you get the real fear of missing out by not playing them.
Well, obviously, if you're playing single entry contests or smaller field stuff, like if you're playing a contest with 1,000 entries in it, like a 180 single entry or 3 max. Like you could have a non-duplicated Lamar Jackson captain lineup. You could have a non-duplicated or minimally like 2, which is still fine in those contests. Just for argument's sake, like my lineups, I'm building my line. I'm playing 70 lineups tonight. I've left as much of 4,000 on the table in some lineups, and since I play for as little duplication as possible, I will have 0 lineups with Lamar Jackson in the captain. I think if you're going for the million, I've run Lamar Jackson captain lineups, and I can't see how they're not duplicated, because the popular punts down there, like you mentioned, leaving money on the set table. It's kind of hard. Lamar Jackson's 13K, right? He ends up being 19.5 in the captain. You're either not playing Mahomes, Kelsey, or Hill, and then even then, it's still hard to fit people in. If you want to play Marquise Brown with him in the captain, like you're going down and you're playing a Nick Boyle, you're playing a Gus Edwards, like, but you have any other lineup that does that has to do that also. So it may feel to you like we have these the ownership projections Jamino has, and like Nick Boyle is going to be projected to be 12% owned at a couple of $100, or Devin Duvernay, like the 4th wide receiver, at 7% owned. So normally on showdown slates, we'd see those guys at 3% owned, because it's like, oh, I'm going to be tricky and punt there. But if you make lineups with Jackson and Mahomes and one of them is in the captain spot, it's almost impossible not to play the punt plays.
Yeah, and those are the guys that everybody's going to be on. So I think, the way to leverage that is, we know Baltimore's going to run the football. I mean, these teams played last season in September. They actually played in week 3, and both teams were 2-0, just like they are right now. And the Ravens ran the ball 32 times for 203 yards and 4 touchdowns and lost. I mean, the Ravens are going to run the football. We know that. So the way to get, if you're fading Lamar Jackson, you best be playing some of those Baltimore running backs, because that's where the touchdowns are going. I mean, neither team is getting shut out in this game. That's not going to happen in a game, with the pretty high total. So fade Jackson, play the running backs, and you got to get the running backs right. And if you do that, and Lamar has a pedestrian game, his line in their head-to-head meeting last year, 267 passing yards, no touchdowns, 46 rushing yards, 1 touchdown. You'd probably take that if you fade Lamar Jackson. I mean, that's 20 fantasy points-ish. So, that doesn't kill you if you fade him at 19K in the captain spot on DraftKings. If Mark Ingram gets 2 or 3 touchdowns, or, Gus Edwards gets a couple touchdowns, that's going to be the key. So, if you're fading Jackson, you better be playing some of the running backs, I guess, is the way to do that, because the production's got to come from somewhere.
Right. I'm not saying I'm fading Lamar Jackson. I'm just saying I'm playing no lineups.
You're just fading him in the captain
spot. Exactly. I will have most of my lineups. I would say 90% of my lineups have Lamar Jackson in it, just not in the captain spot. So looking at some of the YouTube chat, I believe some guys talking about fading the high-priced Chiefs players, because if you put Patrick Mahomes in the captain spot, it's kind of hard not to play Hill or Kelsey, and then if you want to play Lamar Jackson, now you're back in the same area that you had a problem with Lamar in the captain spot. I think the sharpest, which it's a lower probability. When I mean sharp, meaning that it's higher expected value for the probability that happens, is that I'm building most of my lineups for a low-scoring game. So I'm building lineups that I'm using the defenses. I think the kickers are going to be overly popular just based on price. I would never put a kicker in the captain. It'll happen once in a blue moon. You can do it. We get 5 field goals in a low-scoring game. It's hard for the kicker to be the highest-scoring player, especially in this type of game. But I think in lower scoring games, the correlation matters a little bit less. So I've built some lineups where, I'm using Clyde Edwards-Helaire, someone that could get rushing yards and dump-offs and things like that in the captain, and then no Mahomes with him, and then have Lamar Jackson, and kind of the Chiefs have to play catch-up. You have the Ravens defense in there, and really the Ravens skill players don't score well. It's the pick six and dump offs, and the game's 16-10, that type of game. And in those types of games, you could play receiver captains and not pair them with a quarterback, especially when the quarterbacks are this expensive. So there's an instance where Kelsey has 100 yards and a touchdown, is the highest scoring skill position player, and Mahomes at 12,000 is sitting there with 210 yards and one touchdown, and you know other players could possibly outscore them for the price. So like, I know these are weird constructions, but I think if you're playing for the million, no matter how many lineups you're playing for, if you're playing two lineups, build them to try to win the million rather than, or at least less duplicated, win 100,000. Then yes, the Lamar Jackson captain lineup is the most likely winner of this slate. But do you want to play for a couple 100,000, or do you want to play for a couple hundred?
Yeah, and I mean nobody else on the planet is rooting for a 16-10 game other than Blender tonight.
Right.
So I mean that's gonna be it's gonna be less duplicated because everybody. I mean these standalone games, national TV, two big time quarterbacks and two high scoring offenses. Everyone wants to watch the points roll in and bet the over, and and take all the skill players. So while what you're saying isn't the most likely outcome, it still is going to be under-owned compared to maybe the expectation of it finishing at the top. Like it could happen, and it's not going to be owned all that much, especially the defenses. And what's funny I agree with your point on the kickers, given the matchup probably being a little bit over-owned. But what's funny and gets lost in this whole game with these quarterbacks is these are probably the two best kickers in the National Football League. Butker makes 3 straight 58-yarders against the Chargers that, the first two didn't count, a timeout and what have you. And then the third one he makes and the game's over. And Justin Tucker, the most accurate kicker in the history of the league. So they don't get that much attention because of how good the teams are, but you could see some 50-plus yard field goals in this game too. So, but I agree. I think the leverage is with some of those other guys. And I think there's some, you don't necessarily have to go with the Nick Boyle level punts, but the Gus Edwards type and the Miles Boykin type, he's going to be a little popular. But figuring out what to do with those Ravens running backs, Dobbins and Edwards in particular, like Mark Ingram will be probably a little bit higher owned because of his name value. But this is a team that's going to use all three of those guys. And if you look at their snaps last week, 27 for Ingram, 20 for Dobbins, 20 for Edwards. First week was 21 for Ingram, 23 for Dobbins, and 15 for Edwards. So they might ride the hot hand a little bit if somebody gets going, but this is not Mark Ingram's backfield. It's a three-man backfield. So if you look at the fact that on DraftKings, Ingram is 6,800 and 37% owned, whereas Dobbins is 5,600 and 17% owned, and Edwards is $1,600 and 15% owned. Given the way that Baltimore operates their backfield, I think that Dobbins and Edwards are better plays than Ingram at twice the ownership. Not that Mark Ingram can't have a good game, but it's not like Mark Ingram is the guy that's going to get all the first and second down work. This is a rotating backfield, and they're all going to get carries.
I think an interesting build, one I'm not doing, is because it'll be tilting if like all three of them score. But for the price, like Ingram and Dobbins are closely priced together. I don't think I would play them both together. I think I could play Edwards with one of them because he's so cheap that he doesn't have to do as much to get there, while Dobbins and Ingram almost need touchdowns and 80-plus yards. And I think in lineups, if you wanted to play contrarian and play two of the running backs, you play them in a lineup without Lamar Jackson, right? Because they're probably vulturing rushing touchdowns from Jackson. So that's a way to get unique. I mean, a lot of this is just how to get unique, because we could just sit here and go, play Lamar and captain, play CEH. He's underpriced at 7,800, especially if he's going to get targets out of the backfield. You play the kickers. I mean, I'm going to be, I don't know what I'm going to be over on Sammy Watkins. I mean, I know Gimino has it projected for 14% owned. I can't see him being that low owned, being one of the primary wide receivers at what, 5K?
Well, that was probably a little bit of a hedge against his status when when it wasn't clear if he was going to be okay to go tonight. So, yeah, maybe he checks in a little bit higher than that, given the fact that he is active and seems like he's good to go. So, somebody in the chat said that it's when I mentioned all three of the guys getting carries, mentioned that it's Lamar's backfield. Fair enough, four guys in the backfield to split carries. Yeah, so I think Watkins maybe instead of 15, maybe he checks in closer to 20 or 22, but still will be lesser owned than he otherwise would have been, if we knew that he was playing this morning.
So if you had to fade one chief, which one would you choose in a lineup? Because they're all fairly expensive. So if you had to fade one of them,
one of the higher end,
one of the higher
Chiefs?
end. Yeah, obviously, yeah. I'm fading Nick Keiser. Yeah, I know that's probably the one you want to fade at 200. That's a safe fade. You don't have to worry about that.
It's probably Hill. The Ravens have had issues over the last couple of years with tight ends. It's a really good matchup for Kelsey in the middle of the field as opposed to Hill. The Ravens have good corners, and Hill can always bust an 80-yarder and break you for fading him. But I think Hill's floor is lower than Kelsey's in this matchup, and when you consider that he's a little bit more reliant on the big play. If there was a Chief that, you'd say, would it surprise me if Mahomes only had 10 points? Yes. Would it surprise me if Kelsey only had 6 or 8 points? Yes. It wouldn't surprise me if Hill only had, 7 or 8 points tonight. So he's the one I'd be underweight on.
Right. And then how about for the Ravens? Because we have a lot more options. It feels like you have a lot more options on the Ravens because you have the 3 running backs. Then you got
it's definitely Ingram. There's no way I'd be at 38% Ingram. Not with the way they operate their backfield. Like Dobbins and Edwards at half the ownership that are going to get a similar amount of carries and they're cheaper. I can't see going overweight on Ingram being that chalky.
And how about the receivers? I mean, because you have Brown, you got Andrews, you got Boykin. Boykin's running more routes. So,
Boykin played the most snaps the first 2 weeks. Boykin's played at that price, that's where a lot of if you're playing Lamar and Mahomes, a lot of those lineups are going to have Boykin because he's 3,400. It works perfectly in there. He's going to get the snaps. Boykin will definitely be the most popular value on the slate.
Him and Nick Boyle. How about Nick? Don't forget about Nick Boyle.
I mean, the argument for Nick Boyle is that his butt might fall into the end zone and he's $800. So it happens, but double-digit owned Nick Boyle. I mean, I never thought I would see the day where Nick Boyle is 13% owned. Look, your point is the issue that I have with playing Nick Boyle is if you're playing Nick Boyle, it's most likely because the rest of your lineup looks like somebody else's lineup is gonna look, because it means you're playing Lamar and Mahomes and 3 stud players at the top.
Well, that's why instead of Nick Boyle, play Devin Duvernay. He got 1 catch, right?
Well, he was a stud in college too. That counts for something,
right? It could happen. He's the lowest. He's 7% projected owned. He had 1 target and 1 reception in both their past 2 games. I mean, that's not going to cut it for an optimal lineup. But
he played 6 snaps last week.
Hey, I've won showdowns with people that have only played 2 snaps.
All it takes is 1.
Aldrick Robinson, 2 touchdowns, 2 snaps. That's all you need. But I think that the point that you made is very important. That if you're zeroing out your lineup or coming close within 500 of the salary cap, and you're playing Nick Boyle or Duvernay or whatever, you understand that lineup in the large field GPP is almost likely duplicated probably at least 20 or 30 times at minimum. But if you want to live with that, that's fine. I mean, I'm Keith on yesterday's show, we play similarly but different approaches. He's playing 150 lineups looking for the optimal. What is going to be the winning lineup? And then he just hopes that it's not duplicated a bunch. I build lineups going, I'm going to build 70 lineups that I think could be under 15 dupes. And I just hope that that's the optimal. Like that, I'm going the opposite way of like I know these lineups are not are low probability, but I know that they're higher probability that they're not going to be duplicated as much. So I'd rather do it that way. Mine is a much more high variance approach. I'm not going to get the split it 80 ways and I get a couple of $1,000. But when I win, it's going to be the whole shebang. So to understand that one way is not right and one way is not wrong. It's just that I focus on that because some people in the chat are like, how could you possibly fade Lamar and the captain? And it's like I use lineup HQ and I just ran 300 Lamar captain lineups, and I didn't see. I literally looked. I scrolled through. I'm like, there's no way that none of these are. I mean, like there's only so many options when you're paying that much for the captain.
Right. And, if you get that lineup that's got Lamar and Mahomes and it's got, $300 left and it looks pretty good. Yeah. So, I mean, that lineup's going to be duped pretty easily.
You can play that in single entry. If you want to play higher stakes stuff and smaller contests, I mean, then you could it'll be a little bit more chalky and, leave 1,000 on the table and you still could play skilled players and that could be the optimal in the 180 or something, 3 max, and that's like $20,000. I mean, that's fine. It's just that if you're playing these luck box, whatever, especially like FanDuel, people on YouTube are talking about FanDuel, like because you don't have the salary multiplier. Like, how do you not play?
And not the FanDuel cap is a lot softer as well. Without that, you don't have the multiplier. Like, you can play Lamar in the captain spot on or MVP, I guess they call it, on FanDuel, and you can still get really good players around him. Like, you don't have to go to Boykin or Nick Boyle or Mecole Hardman or any of those guys on FanDuel, even if you're playing Lamar in the MVP spot. So that's another one where, and with their salary differentials just being $500, I can't see a solo winner on FanDuel tonight unless the game is really, really weird, because you don't have the defenses over there either. So there's going to be a lot of overlap with the cap on FanDuel.
Right.
Tonight.
If there's almost no way to get even under 10. I mean, I just don't. It would have to be extremely low scoring, and it's Nick Boyle 3 touchdown day, and he's the highest scorer on the slate. Like, if you're willing to invest money for the 1 in 70,000 times that happens, go for it. But most likely, if you're playing FanDuel, you're playing for it. No one's winning $1 million. Like, outright. Like, it's going to be one of those things where 1,700 people get to put Millie Maker winner in their Twitter profile.
I'll take that. I guess now I'm going to put some lineups in, a few more so that I can.
Because technically you won. You won the Millie.
Right.
You won the Millie Maker, right?
I have one. I have chopped a Showdown first place before, and it wasn't a millie, but 50,000 first place prize or something, and it's really hard to grasp it until you're actually in that spot. That 50,000 first place, and we tied 75 ways or whatever, and I got $280 or something like that. It would obviously be more when you're chopping $1 million, but still, if it's 700 people or 600 people, and kudos to, FanDuel is offering the refund if the game goes over 75 points tonight, so you can put the lineups in on FanDuel. If the game goes over 75 points, you get refunded over there. And if it's 16-10, then Blender's winning all the money on DraftKings right. With his builds there.
Maybe that's what I should do. That's how I hedge. I build low-scoring lineups on FanDuel, and if it explodes, I may get my money back.
I'll hedge it. I'm a Baltimore fan, so I'm just going to hedge it all the way around. I'm going to go put a bet on the Chiefs, and then I've got all the bases covered tonight.
But the team that's more likely to troll us is the Ravens.
Oh, no doubt.
Right? I mean, because I don't see, like, yes, if Demarcus Robinson will be owned, Hardman will be owned. Like, I just don't see the subsidiary pieces of the Chiefs. It's more the fact that the Ravens could score 5 touchdowns, and it could be 5 touchdowns to all 3 of the running backs. It could be Willie Snead with 2. Lamar could have 4 rushing touchdowns. I mean, that whole production could go in a million. Hollywood Brown could have 212 yards on 8 catches and 3 touchdowns, and then Nick Boyle falls in the end zone. Like, it could be so far apart that, like, I'm more likely in my lineups to play around with the Ravens pieces and take stands with the Chiefs pieces. Like, I'm going to be way under on Tyreek Hill and way over on Edwards-Helaire and Watkins. And, like, if Tyreek Hill has a good game, then I most likely don't win. But, like, unless I'm willing to build, like, 7 million lineups, like, there's too many Ravens pieces and I'm playing for a low-scoring game, so, like, if some of these guys get 8 points, they could be in the winning lineup in a low-scoring game.
Yeah. Key being, if it's a low-scoring game, then that's where you're getting your leverage there, just because nobody's going to be operating with that mindset. So, and I agree. I mean, I kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier. I agree on the underweight Hill and overweight, other pass catchers for the Chiefs. Be really curious to see where Watkins' ownership ends up coming in. And on the Ravens side, underweight on Ingram and overweight the other two running backs. But I mean, you could see Lamar and Edwards and Dobbins and Ingram, they could all get 1 touchdown tonight, and it wouldn't surprise anybody, just given the way they run their offense. So, and I think they will. I mean, I think the Ravens will. They're one of the only teams in the NFL these days that can get away with running the football as much as they do, just because of what Lamar Jackson opens up for them. And they probably will bleed the clock a little bit tonight and try to keep the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hands, frustrate them a little bit. So, maybe that's where the lower scoring game comes in, particularly if Baltimore can get out to a lead. Didn't happen last year when these two teams played. The Chiefs got in front and Baltimore was in catch-up mode, which not where they normally want to be. But it wouldn't surprise me if the Ravens, particularly if they get ahead, if they try to slow this game down a little bit.
Right. Like, I'm playing a lot of lineups that are based on a lower scoring Ravens substantial, like the Ravens win by 2 touchdowns and the Chiefs are trying to get back into the game. So, like, I'm building 4 2s in both directions, because if you take a look, if you're a premium member, you could sign up rotogrinders.com/premium. And you could also go rotogrinders.com/media/MNF. You get $5 off. $5 off your first month of Core 4, right? You get NFL, MLB, NBA, PGA. Yeah, Cards does the PGA stuff. There's way more PGA content than you'd ever possibly need. I never thought there'd be so much golf content that could be, because most of the time in golf cards, I feel like the more research that I do, the more likely that everything that happens is the complete opposite, and I should have just closed my eyes to just picked anyone.
Golf's gotten huge. There was a 200K to first GPP on DraftKings last week for a pretty underwhelming golf tournament on a week where the tournament ran through an NFL Sunday. Never before would that have happened in the fall with 200K to first. So golf has become a really popular DFS sport, and I started working on the content for this week already here this afternoon. So we're cranking it out.
But in the premium content, Eric Beimfohr does the Slate IQ for Showdown, for NFL Showdown, and he showed that the construction leverage is on the side of 4-2, 2-4, 4-2 type of builds. So I go with the data, and it gives you the most leverage. That I'm building a lot of lineups where it's 4-2, but I'm building them for the side that's a 2 is the winning side more than the 4. So, for instance, like, I think the Chiefs lead themselves to more 2-player combinations of just Mahomes, Kelsey, right? You play Mahomes, Kelsey and the captain, and then 4 Ravens. Or you play Watkins and the captain with Mahomes and 4 Ravens. Or you play Clyde Edwards-Helaire and the captain, and then you don't even need Mahomes because he could rush them in. And then you play Kelsey in the flex and then 4 Ravens. And then vice versa on the other side, where I'm playing Lamar with Marquise Brown in the captain. He has a big game and he gets all the scores. And then 4 Chiefs. running it back that way because, they'll have to pass. Mahomes gets 330 yards, 3 touchdowns to 3 different receivers. So playing that type of game rather than when I ran 3-3 builds, like you get a lot more duplication, and then also you get a lot more kickers. And I'm like, if you just go by the pricing, like anyone that's using an optimizer, if you're using lineup HQ, if you're using projections, the kickers, there aren't that many other skill players in their ranges. They're either way lower or way higher. That, like, from a median perspective, the median on the kickers is better than all the other players in their range. So the optimizer is going to give you more of them unless you tell it otherwise. But the kickers don't have high ceilings. So I think that's why I think the ownership on kickers on DraftKings is going to be much higher than normal because of that. And then you're going to have less ownership on, obviously Boykin's going to be there, probably Watkins. But I think the defenses, the medians on the defenses in a high-scoring game tend to be lower. So I think if people are using projections, that's why Jamino has the defenses much lower owned than we see, and they're not expensive defenses. So I will have maybe 2 or 3 times the field on the defenses, but you should already know that because I'm playing for the game to be 16-10. So that kind of makes sense.
Defenses in the captain spot?
I was thinking about it. Ravens defense in the captain spot. See, but understand, okay, another concept with the defenses is that there are game scripts. Take a look at the Jets Colts from yesterday, where the defense, if you get a pick 6, all you're doing is giving the ball back to the opposing offense. So I know a lot of people play Showdown and go, well, I can't play the defense.
But that offense was the Jets. That didn't help.
Well, no, it didn't. In that case, it didn't help. No. But a lot of people avoid playing defenses with offensive. Oh, I can't play 4 guys from the team and then the defense from the opposite team. So I will think logically. Like if you get a pick 6, that team, if the Ravens get a pick 6, it's not like Lamar gets the ball. He'll have less plays. So it's the Chiefs that have the ball most of the time if there's a pick 6, and vice versa. So I'm building lineups that most of my lineups that have Ravens defense has Chiefs in them. And like a Ravens in the flex, Ingram in the captain, or Dobbins in the captain, or something like that, and then 4 Chiefs. And just like the Ravens, just 6 sacks, 3 interceptions, and a pick 6, and then basically it's Mahomes trying to come back from down 3 touchdowns, and then the Ravens running the ball into the ground. Like that type of build could work.
Now, yeah, logically that makes sense. Now, other than the fact that Mahomes has never thrown an interception in September, we might be hoping, hoping for 3
in September. Are we doing? Is he part of the like Derrick Henry doesn't get good until November type of things?
I don't know. He's like 29 touchdowns and no interceptions in his career in September. Small sample size noise, yes, but most people are going to be afraid to play the defenses. Now, Baltimore's defense is extremely talented. They've added, what could be one of their future next up-and-coming stars on defense, and Patrick Queen, who they got in the draft, that he's already making an impact after just a couple of games. So I like the logic behind using some of the defenses tonight, and people will be afraid to. Do I have the stones to throw them in the captain? Probably not, if we're being honest. But, it could work if you get some sacks and a pick 6 in this game.
Right, I think you're convincing me. I got to make 1 or 2 Ravens DSD captain line. I already got way too much of them to begin with. But in Lineup HQ, someone mentioned earlier a question for those that use Lineup HQ, which is a premium tool. So sign up for that. Of like what type of groups that you would make if you're building a bunch of lineups. And like the most obvious ones that you should probably do on a regular basis is like no more than 2 of the kickers and defenses in a lineup. I mean, it would have to be such a ridiculously low-scoring game for like 3 or 4 of them. And those are the high-scoring plays. Like everything is 3 and out. And the other obvious one is that if you have a quarterback and the captain, you pair them up with 2 wide receivers in the flex. And if you have a wide receiver and the captain, you make sure they're quarterbacks in the flex. Are there any other ones that you're using tonight?
No, I mean, that's a good one. I think, if you want to play the game flow angle, right, you can you can correlate running backs from one team with receivers from the other, and make sure you're using at least two of whatever group you put together there. But it's not, that's not a hard and fast rule. And, normally I would say if you got a couple running backs on the same team that you might want to limit that to one, but with the way the Ravens do it, I don't think you have to. Like you were talking earlier, you can probably play Gus Edwards with one of their other two running backs, given their rushing volume. So that's one that I might do with a normal team that has like a 50-50 split of running backs, and it's unlikely that they both get there. But with Baltimore having three and, running the ball 30 plus times a game like they do, I don't think you have to make that stipulation tonight.
Right. I think some interesting constructions. I think, like, we view the Ravens running backs as, like, they primarily run the ball, but they do get targets. So, like, I know, like, Clyde Edwards-Helaire has started to get targets. So, like, I don't mind pairing Mahomes.
I mean, everyone was freaking out because he didn't get many targets the first game, but they were ahead by like 3 scores most of the game. Like, don't freak out about Edwards-Helaire not getting any targets in the first game.
Right, but he has the highest floor out of all these. I mean, like, if I had to choose one player, like if I was playing cash games or something like that, like my goal is to get both quarterbacks and CEH. I don't need Ingram, right? I mean, it's a 3-headed backfield, so I mean, yeah, I would love to get Ingram also, but he probably can't. So, like, for a more optimal cash game type lineup, like, I think you don't have to have Lamar in the captain for that. I think you could jam in, like, CEH in the captain because he's 7,800, and you could play both. Like, you could build a lineup where you're playing CEH in the captain and then, like, both quarterbacks and then, like, Kelsey, Boykin, kicker, like, something like that. And all I'm saying is that Jackson's probably the optimal, but I think you could build median constructions with, out of all the players that wouldn't be a quarterback, it would be Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Yeah, I think that's fair in terms of floor. Edwards-Helaire, and I think Kelsey's got a pretty good floor tonight as well, but take the guaranteed touches with the running back. And yeah, none of those Ravens backs are necessary. And the floors are low for all three of them just because, okay, if one guy, if Ingram gets off to a slow start and then Dobbins is doing well, maybe he gets more work tonight. You're just not going to know until we see it in action. So you don't have to play any of the Baltimore running backs if you're just looking for a single optimal build.
So anyone in the YouTube chat, feel free to hit the thumbs up button or the thumbs down button or any button. Hit whatever button you want. There's a subscribe button. There's a lot of buttons on that YouTube page. I don't know. The recommended button, the share button. Hit all the buttons. It helps us out. If you have any questions in the YouTube chat, feel free to you could post them now. We'll be on for a couple of more minutes. I mean, we still got...
So nobody has clicked the thumbs down button. See, everybody is nice.
But I don't mind the thumb. If you know the intricacies of YouTube, the thumbs down button helps also. So hit both of them.
Any pub is good pub.
Right. As long as it's something that they know that you clicked on something, I think that's all that matters. So that's why I don't mind. So if you have any questions in the YouTube chat...
if you continuously click the thumb up and then unclick it and click it again, does that?
No, that doesn't. No, you can't game it that.
No extra
Google's
brownie.
too smart. They know the tricks, right? Daniel Johnson said there's no Noah Fant button, right? There's no Noah Fant on this slate. Just even if you lose tonight, let me just say, you're watching the Chiefs and the Ravens. So even if you lose tonight, it's a good football game. Just realize when you lose tonight, your next chance to play Showdown, it's going to be Jets-Broncos.
I was just going to say that. Everybody will realize how fortunate they are for this game tonight when they're watching Jets-Broncos on Thursday.
Right. So even if you lose, you won, right? Because the next Showdown, Jesus, I don't even know. I may leave $10,000 on the table because, like, I don't know who the roster. I mean, the salaries haven't come out for that, but I mean, are we going to get like Chris Hogan 8,600? Or I mean, what are we going to get that slate?
Yeah, somebody is going to have to fill up the salary cap. That's going to be an interesting algorithm. Otherwise, maybe they'll just say play whoever you want because we don't know. We don't know who's going to.
Sam Darnold 11-2.
We'll be lucky if Tambo and Luch show up for that one. You got to see if they'll show up to do the program.
Stephen Smith asks, I'm going way underweight on Lamar today, hoping for leverage. Is that a bad idea? Like, no, it's not a bad idea. It's just that you're more likely to lose. But if you don't lose, you're more likely to win a lot. Like, that's the whole concept behind there. It's from a median perspective, it's not smart. But if Lamar doesn't have if he has 160 yards and no touchdowns, like, you're not going to need Lamar, and it's going to be a non-Lamar lineup that is probably less duplicated or non-duplicated that wins.
And you play to win the game.
You play to win the game. You play to win by yourself. You don't play to win with a bunch of other people. QQ, is 3 uniques too much? How much randomness do you use? It really depends on your player pool and what type of build you're making. Like, right, I on Showdown, I'm making very specific builds, so my uniques tend to be 1. Because I have no 3-3 lineups. So, like, and I have tons of groups. So, like, there's only so many combinations of the things that I want to build that, like, I don't need. Like,
yeah, if you're making a lot of lineups, it's hard to do 3 on a single game slate.
Right.
Hard to do 3 uniques.
Right. If you're doing 10 lineups and you have a wide player pool or whatever, yeah, then you could do 3 because you don't want to be as diversified. But I mean, if you did 1, it just means that if your lineups do well, most of your other lineups also do well because they're sharing more players. So it's not necessarily what's correct or incorrect. I mean, there are times that I use Uniques 3 because I'm playing scattershot of a lot of stuff. But, like, I'm not playing any 5-1. Like, do you see a 5-1 build that works in a game that it's not, like, a complete blowout? Just from the build, because I tried to look at it, and it's just the pricing makes no sense of why. Like, I could see CEH in the captain and then 5 Ravens because CEH just goes nuts and the Ravens have to come back. But outside of that, like, you would never, or, you know, because even if you play Lamar in the captain and 5 Chiefs.
I was going to say, it'd be Lamar and all the Chiefs. That would be the other way.
Right.
If Lamar scores 4 touchdowns and runs a couple of them in.
No, he'd have to run all of them in at that point because then, you know, someone on his team is going to outscore a Chief.
Right. I mean, it's within the realm of possibility. Not most likely, but it's within the realm of possibility.
Well, of course. But I'm saying I don't see any other combination like, you know, Tyreek Hill in the captain and 5 Ravens.
I mean, if Hill houses an 80-yard reverse or something, and, you know, it would take a wonky set of circumstances, a couple of defensive touchdowns or something, you know, if you're playing the defense on one of the teams, but certainly doesn't feel like 5-1 would be. Yeah, maybe it is on Thursday if the Broncos-Jets game is, you know, 23-3, but I don't see that happening tonight. I mean, one of these, I can't see this game being a blowout. It's just the teams are too good.
I think for the Jets-Broncos, I'm going to play a 0-0. See if I can get away with it. I'll leave 50,000 on the table. I'll be unique by not playing.
That's the slate where you roster both defenses and both kickers.
No, but that's what people do. I'm going to play Onslaught. It's the opposite type. I'm a maniac. This is the game that I'm playing for the under. Jets-Broncos, I'm playing for like a 34-28 shootout. Whatever anyone else is going to do, I'm going to do the opposite until I win $1 million. And just hopefully I don't go broke by that time.
We wish you the best with that Thursday night shootout.
It could happen. Who's starting for the Broncos now? Is Driscoll even starting anymore?
Well, let's see if we got news after yesterday. I did not check up on the Broncos news after the game. Let's see.
Maybe we get some backup quarterback at 6,000. Maybe they screw up the pricing.
Yeah, I don't think the Bears announced that they're going to go with Foles, but did not see after Driscoll got benched. I haven't seen anything else, and nope, can't find anything yet.
I'm more excited. Truthfully, I'm more excited for the Jets Broncos showdown than I am for tonight. I think I'm much more excited to watch the game tonight. It's just that I would hope so. I love the garbage games because people just you listen and go, oh, how do you captain Darnold's going to be like 10,000 and it's like no one's going to want to play him at captain, and it's like I'm going to play Darnold at captain with Berrios, Hogan, and Herndon, and then run it back, and then and of course the game's going to end up being 10-3, and I lose anyway. But whatever, I'll go for it. It could happen.
It could happen. That's the mantra of trying to win the million.
Right? It could. You have to go with what could happen, not what will probably happen. Because if you go with what probably happens, that means you'll probably be getting maybe a couple of $1,000, which is fine. I don't want to knock it or anything.
But the logic being that that's 75% likely to be the outcome, but 90% of people are doing it, and the other outcomes are 25% likely or whatever. I'm making up numbers, but 10% of people are doing it. That's the premise behind that. And weird things happen, man. It's football. A bounce here, a bounce there. DK Metcalf forgetting to secure the ball and all the way into the end zone. It happens.
Tyler Walker asks, is Boyle and Duvernay too thin for the same lineup?
Yeah, I think so.
I also like it. If you're using both those players and you're less than like 49.5, like I think it's too thin because either it's duplicated or they're never going to score enough points. And then if you're leaving 4,000 on the table or using Boyle, Duvernay, like I'm crazy and I don't even have those lineups.
I'm looking to see. So if you do Lamar and the captain with Boyle and Duvernay, you can get
Mahomes.
Yeah, you can get Mahomes, CEH, Hill, and Lamar in the captain. I mean, you can that lineup will even be duplicated.
Right. That's the point that I'm making. Even that one will be duplicated.
Right. Even that one will be duplicated with both quarterbacks, CEH and Hill. Don't build that lineup because everyone that'll be the 200-way chop, even with both Boyle and Duvernay on it. Like
maybe not a 200-way chop, but I mean, that could be a 50-way chop.
Yeah.
But I mean, hey, which is fine. I always, because people say like, but I don't care if I'm splitting. I want to win. It's like, okay, then, but don't, that's perfectly fine. It's just that I'm going to play every showdown and, you may split a couple of times and then like, I'm going to, I've won 2 showdowns before with less than 5 dupes and I've made 1,000,000% ROI because of that, because I'm not playing 150 lineups every slate. So understand that my advice comes from that perspective and not necessarily like, oh, I don't like Lamar Jackson and the captain. It's like, no, that's most likely going to be the winner. I agree with that. They want to know if I have any Pringle, and no, I don't have. I'll have some chips to watch the game, but I will not have any Byron. If Byron Pringle kills me, then I lose. I'm much more likely to take shots on the cheap Ravens players than I am on the Chiefs.
Yeah, I would agree there. Let's see how many. He played 7 snaps last week, Pringle.
Okay, that's more than Duvernay.
Duvernay played 6. So let's see. Yeah, 6. But the problem is the Ravens have been way ahead in both games. Like if you get a competitive game, he probably will be out there a little bit more, especially if they get behind. But Pringle's he's got Hill, he's got Watkins, he's got Hardman, maybe even Demarcus Robinson ahead of him. That you just got too many guys ahead of you on the pecking order.
Okay, Daniel Johnson, before we get out of here, what's your chip of choice?
He says Tostitos and salsa. I would rather go with some queso dip myself, but you can't go wrong with Tostitos.
Right, and salsa. I'm not a big fan of avocados. So guacamole, the queso, it's I'm very.
It exists.
I'm very vanilla.
All right, that's all right. Just have a regular cheese dip.
Or a no dip. Just eat the chips. It's all Why do we have to make everything so complicated? Just give me chips and there you go. I eat cereal dry. It doesn't matter. Just like my wife. My wife was complaining before that I made a sandwich of just turkey on bread. And she's like, that's not a sandwich. I'm like, it's turkey on bread. It's a sandwich. It's like no cheese, no mayo, no lettuce, not a pickle, no tomato, no. Like, that's not a sandwich. You just put meat on bread. I'm like, that is a sandwich. It's less complicated. I don't need all the other stuff.
More of a sandwich than a hot dog.
True.
Now the chat's going to start going off about hot dogs being a sandwich. That means it's time to go.
Yeah, we got to get out of here before that starts. That's the threats will come in. So hopefully in tonight's Monday night showdown, on DraftKings, FanDuel, 8:15. As I always say, I'm going to be completely transparent. I want to win before you win, so I'm going to root for me. And then because Cards is the co-host here, if I don't win, then Cards could win solo. And if neither of us win, I hope one of the people watching wins. So like at least you're third on the audience is third to me. So
that's not bad. That's still pretty high.
no, for me, that's extremely high. If the fact that you're even on my radar, the audience is even on my radar is a compliment. So if one of us don't win, I hope one of you guys win. Hit the thumbs up button. You get a Core 4 premium subscription, $5 off. Go to rotogrinders.com/media/MNF. It should be in the description below somewhere in the YouTube. You're clicking around on your mouse anyway to click the buttons and the thumbs up and the subscribe. Click that link too. Check it out for the Core 4 premium subscription. That has been the Monday Night Showdown show on RotoGrinders.com.